Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
A lot of very interesting topics in the show today, I have to say. So we're going to cover this immigration raid at a Hyundai plant involving hundreds of Korean nationals. A lot of interesting stuff going on there. We also have some bombshell revelations with regard to Epstein, including we actually have released now the full birthday book. It is even more disgusting, disturbing, and creepy than you could possibly imagine. So we will dig into some of that. Dave Weigel is going to join us to talk about two conferences he just attended, one on national conservatism, the other on abundance. Also comes amidst some new, very interesting polling about the Zohran Mamdani race in New York City. So we'll get him to dive into all of that. Jeremy Scahill is also going to join us to talk about the latest potential ceasefire proposal in Israel with regard to Israel and Gaza. We've got some new Gen Z gender divide polling. That's what I'm trying to say. That is fascinating to dig into the various priorities of men and women in Gen Z, depending on who they voted for in the last election. And we're also taking a look at some Tim Dillon political commentary with regard to various political figures. So that should be a fun one.
Yes, that's right. And I apologize for coming in from my house today. We're dealing with some childcare issues. I think that all parents can relate to what that looks like. So if you hear any screaming in the background and or cats coming behind me, you can understand exactly what that is. Thank you, everybody who has been supporting the show, breakingpoints.com. I want to give a special shout out to Krystal and Ryan yesterday for the work that they did. It was an entire team effort behind the scenes preparing for those interviews. And I think that is Breaking Points at its best, releasing the video completely together, some 2 hours together. Everyone can make up their minds for themselves. It's a high stakes story, probably, one of the most important stories. And it just goes to show you the level of journalism that we're committed ourselves here to. So breakingpoints.com, if you can help support the show and you want to see more stuff like that. As you guys could see, it was literally took almost 2.5 hours. And we did, of course, have to, sacrifice views or, not cover other stories and other things. But it does show you the commitment of the type of things that we're committed to here on this show. So breakingpoints.com, if you're able to help us out. And if you can't afford it, no worries. Just please go ahead and subscribe on this video. If you're listening to this on a podcast, go ahead and send the episode to a friend and rate it 5 stars. It really, really helps the show. So with that, let's go ahead and start with Hyundai. This is, I'll tell you, I have been infuriated by many things under the Trump administration. This is one of those which has hit more than anything for a variety of reasons, because it shows the sheer level of stupidity pervading our government right now. Let's go ahead and put some of this video up on the screen, which has now caused an international incident with the state of South Korea. So you're watching, Homeland Security, ICE, basically roll in some military convoy into a Hyundai plant in Georgia. And what you're watching is not only, now I'm going to separate my commentary. Some of the people that they allegedly arrested were in the country illegally, but many of these are highly skilled South Korean nationals who entered the United States under the visa waiver program because they are highly skilled technicians who were dispatched by Hyundai from South Korea to the United States specifically to get a manufacturing plant up and running. So these are the people who are actually at the vanguard of the Trump administration's hailed manufacturing plan, where we are basically going around the world telling Hyundai, telling Japan, all of these other different countries, we're like, you need to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in our country. And they're like, hey, okay, no problem. We absolutely will do so. We'll hire American workers. The only thing is that to get the plant up and running, of course, as if an American company were to open a factory elsewhere, well, they're the only people with experience in the technology. They're the people who are going to set up the plant. They have no intention of staying. And they were literally chained up and, mistreated, put it on a bus, and, summarily humiliated in front of the eyes of the world. I cannot stress this enough, because nobody in the US or Washington actually looks at foreign media. This is an international incident with one of the most important allies for the United States in East Asia. Let's go and put the next one up there on the screen, guys, just to show you the entire Korean government government, opposition, and the ruling party are united in their outrage. This is blockbuster news all over South Korean media. They demanded the return of their workers and said that they will bring them home. They will not be deported. And they have privately had to dispatch a jet in order to do this. I think that this reveals, actually, perhaps we can find some bipartisan agreement here, Krystal, the stupidity of the United States immigration system. In some ways, we hold a gun to Korea's head and say, you need to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in America. They're like, great, absolutely. And in fact, because of our work ethic, we want it to happen right now. And so we're like, cool, that's awesome. And then what they do is they apply for a business visa, and it takes forever. It's not happening. It's not getting approved. And they're like, okay, well, South Korean nationals can enter the United States under the visa waiver program. So we'll just send them over and we'll get this plant up and running. It's better than eating the cost of delays. And so while they're sitting in this plant, then somebody in ICE or the White House, wherever, gets the brilliant idea of let's roll on in there and let's just arrest and chain these guys up. A3, please, just to explain this a little bit more to everybody. And look, I'm not letting Hyundai, I guess, off the hook. They admit that they're entered under the visa waiver program. Their, explanation is, yeah, I mean, we enter under the visa waiver program because the administration was not granting our visas fast enough. And at the very same time that they're, slowing our visa process, they're up our ass to get this plant up and running. So, I mean, I just think that it tells everybody the level of seriousness to which we are committed to, U.S. manufacturing and else. I just can't think of a better poster child for allegedly what's supposed to be happening. The point of the trade deals is to increase tariffs, to tell countries to come here to invest in America. You invest in America, we will roll out the red carpet for you. We will make sure that everything is there. We will allow these, high-skilled technicians, again, who are not trying to stay here or anything. They're literally entering America. They're trying to get the plant up and running, and it eventually is going to create jobs. This is in a rural Georgia, by the way. It's, not like a thriving metropolis. It's a place which, wanted the plant and actually welcomed it to come there. So this again, I just want to emphasize, this is an international incident. And if you are a Japanese company or a Korean company or a German company or any of these others who, again, basically under duress, which fine, the government is telling you, you're going to be slapped with massive tariffs. The European and all these other Asian allies are doing everything they can to actually pay manufacturing to the U.S. to be able to build these things here. And then to do something like this, it is one of the most chilling effects you can possibly think of.
Absolutely.
For the alleged plan of moving manufacturing to the United States of America.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so it shows you the conflict, because one of the supposed goals of the mass deportation is to free up jobs for American workers. These South Korean workers were literally there to create jobs for American workers. So there is just no doubt that you are harming American workers with this action. And yet this action is taken. And, on top of everything, right, there are a lot of ways you can do immigration enforcement. They chose to do the mass show of force, put everybody in, shackles or tied around the waist, and to record that and release it publicly. So to your point about the humiliation, it was an intentional humiliation of these South Korean nationals. With regard to their status, basically what happened, this plant was, this was started actually under the Biden administration, and there was kind of a don't ask, don't tell kind of a policy. Like, look, we don't have a program set up to be able to get you all of the visas in the time period that you need in order to have them properly authorized. Just get, the normal tourist visa that allows for business meetings, and no one's going to do anything about it because we understand the nature of the system. And so that was the understanding of the Biden administration. And they thought that was the understanding under the Trump administration as well. Basically well, we're not going to pass some new program to actually get you the visas that you need, even though we do have those relationships with other countries like Australia and other places where we have a close relationship. We have a close relationship with South Korea. It would make sense to have the same thing. We just don't have it. So there was kind of a tacit understanding of just come in, just do what you need to do. No one's going to do anything. And instead, they're intentionally, summarily rounded up and intentionally humiliated in this regard. It's utter insanity. I mean, it truly is. And I do wonder, is this a Stephen Miller special? Is this the local ICE agent? Like, where does this come from? The fact that it's being released from the sort of the top in terms of the video release tells me that someone pretty high up the chain must have greenlit this and must have embraced it. And it makes absolutely no sense. And, I do think that Trump increasingly has kind of outsourced various pieces of his presidency to different aides, Stephen Miller being a very important one of them. So, likely to me, I feel like it was, Stephen Miller putting his xenophobia over any other sort of goal.
Maybe that's possible. And, I want to be clear. I'm not defending visa fraud or any of that. We just did a segment yesterday. You did about tourist visas, for the GHF and any of that. So
I don't think any of these guys were carrying fully automatic weapons.
Right, right. I'm more just saying in general, like, I don't support visa fraud. I do think, though, that this demonstrates the lack of seriousness. Mm-hmm. South Korea is the 6th or 7th largest trading partner of the United States, 7th in goods and services. It is hands down, behind Japan, the most important U.S. ally in the East Asia. It is a country vital to U.S. national security interests. If you believe in the pivot to Asia, or if you believe in U.S. power projection and good relations that want to make sure that we are not totally at China's whim. Well, this all fits to me with the Chinese National Parade, the military parade that we covered earlier. And one of the most important parts of that parade was a South Korean delegation, which actually shook hands with Kim Jong-un at the behest of the Chinese. And it was done specifically to show a demonstration by the Koreans that, yes, we will be willing to work with China. We accept some of the primacy of China in the region on top of our commitment here to the United States. Now, of course, it's a vital U.S. ally. There's thousands of United States troops present in Korea. We are literally, fought and died together. So this is a country which is united with us in blood. And, to treat their nationals like this, not only in terms of the manufacturing piece, but also it's just the sheer lack of respect for the country. I mean, again, Koreans who are present, the Korean media is like, hey, there's a lot of you guys over here. What happened if we just started rounding all of you up? It's like, oh, you think a lot of these wives of service members and others here are all have perfect visa status? Maybe we should all start looking into it. I mean, that is the level of outrage that we have actually inspired, again, in a very friendly nation to the United States of America, which creates and wants to create jobs here, which is, it's a good trading partner. I could go on forever about some of the people who have really ripped us off here, but this is people creating an extremely high quality product in the United States. It sells well. And it also kind of shows you the problem with a lot of our manufacturing plants, because all of them basically rely on, and everything I've heard from, TSMC, for example, is building that giant plant down in Arizona. And here's the truth that they tell you. They go, look, you guys don't have the expertise. So a lot of our guys, they're going to have to come over for at least a year or two, at the very least, to try and train you up, because you just don't know what we're doing. This is one of the most highly specialized types of manufacturing in the world. I'm not exaggerating. If a single human hair gets into the facility improperly, it can shut down the entire thing. That's what chip manufacturing looks like. There's a high level of expertise that I cannot stress enough, which they have perfected and which they are genuinely the experts on. So for them to be not only mistreated, but to also show them that the level of seriousness and deference that they will not get as people trying to invest in America, what message is that sending to them, to Japan, to all of these other countries, which are genuinely trying, again, to do the right thing? They're terrified. I can tell you that. They're terrified of actions like this.
Just imagine if it was, Americans who were at building a Ford plant, in some foreign country, Mexico. And they're rounded up in that way. I mean, we would be horrified. We would be justifiably what the hell is wrong with you? And even if it's not some super high-tech process, different companies just have different ways of doing things. So if it's a Hyundai factory, you're going to need people who are familiar with that process to help set it up and establish the procedures and all of this is all very logical. And interestingly, Trump, when he was asked about it, seemed to understand the sort of basic logic of this, which makes it all the more perplexing of why the hell this even happened. Let's go ahead and play A4.
It's a battery factory in that case, as I'm told. And, when they're building batteries, if you don't have people in this country right now that know about batteries, maybe we should help them along and let some people come in and train our people. to do, complex things, whether it's battery manufacturing or computer manufacturing or building ships. So we're going to look at that whole situation. We have a lot of industries that we don't have anymore, and we're going to have to train people. And the way you train people is bring people in that know what they're doing and let them stay for a little while and help. So I'm going to look at that. It's a very interesting situation that took place.
Is it straining the relationship with Korea at all?
No, we have a great relationship with South Korea. Really good relationship. We just made a trade deal.
What do you make of that, Saagar?
Yeah, we have a great relationship. Sure, that's news to the Koreans never agree on anything. The only thing they can agree on right now in their own country is screw the United States. I can't get over this because
bringing the world together, Saagar.
We are certainly, and you have to think about in grand strategic terms. In the last month, literally, you have 3 high-profile diplomatic failures on the part of the USA. Number one is Russia, where we have Putin over here. We have the summit. We get nothing out of it. In fact, they just launched one of the largest attacks believe in the history of the war in Ukraine.
Wow.
on the city of Kiev, and they included, I believe, bombing one of their main government buildings. Putin flies to the Chinese military parade and stands in solidarity with Xi. Modi, we slap India with 50% tariffs. Modi says, all right, fine, let's go. Game on. I've got a lot of options. He attends the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. He stands with Xi Jinping. He tweets pictures of the limo with Vladimir Putin. Kim Jong-un, by the way, who at one point had diplomatic relations with the United States, which I supported. I thought it was great. He included at the Chinese military parade. South Korea sends a delegation there. So I am including South Korea, North Korea, Russia, and now China, as well, which very clearly is sending a major message to America. We can be to the world. We can be a better partner to you. We won't lecture you and abuse you. You can do whatever you want. And, that's not a great set of rules necessarily if you want to live by. But for a lot of those people, all they see from us is hypocrisy. They see stupidity. With the Chinese, they see, at the very least, there's no hypocrisy, right? They're not going to lecture them on human rights or war or anything. They don't care. They're like, how can we do business? And, so we've lost not only the sheen of America. And look, I think there's often a talking point like, oh, we're losing the world, like people's citizens are against us. That's kind of been true for a long time, but obviously billions of people still want to come here. This is about our government's relations with other governments and what it means for the future. Each of these moves has been designed basically to antagonize critical U.S. allies, which if you just look from a picture of the globe, you would want to have on your side, as 50% of global GDP arises in Asia. And then who are the countries that are getting the red carpet? Israel, and apparently Ukraine too, by the way. So what are we doing here? This is the literal opposite of the vision that was allegedly sold, under the 2024 campaign. And I know it's in direct contravention, not only of the things that they said, but of the genuine beliefs of so many of the people who work in the Trump administration. The India fallout might be the most single and consequential, but the Korean one, you cannot just walk away from this. Like this is a major incident in Korea. Go and use Google Translate. It's not hard. All right. You can go and look at it for yourself.
Yeah.
For how they're reporting all this. It's big. It's big in the country. They're not going to forget. And I do think that this will have a big impact on our relations over the next decade.
Well, and this is the perfect story to encapsulate the way that those foreign relationships matter here. Because to your point, the whole idea, one of the things that was sold with the Trump administration as well was, oh, we're going to have this manufacturing renaissance and that's what the tariffs are about, blah, blah, blah. First of all, that's failing anyway. We've had 78,000 manufacturing jobs lost since the beginning of the year. In the last month, we just got the jobs report on Friday, which was really poor, and in which we lost another 12,000 manufacturing jobs. So we're already going in the wrong direction where all of that is concerned. And then, if companies feel like they're not going to be able to build plants, if they feel like their workers are going to be humiliated, they're not going to be able to operate. Not exactly a big encourager of investing in America, creating jobs here, rebuilding the manufacturing base. So, these relationships that can sound very sort of squishy when you're talking about them in an abstract can have real, tangible impacts on people's lives, on jobs, on employment. And that's why I think this story encapsulates, that sort of intersection between what we're doing abroad, our relationships with these countries, and what it means for people here at home. Really quick, just as a mention, because we've actually got Weigel standing by, and I want to bring him in to talk about Zoran and abundance and national conservatism and all the rest. But there was a significant SCOTUS, I don't even know if you call this a decision, it was a shadow docket decision. You can put this up on the screen. A5, they lifted the restrictions on LA immigration stops that have been imposed by a lower court. So effectively, the lower court said, what you're doing is tantamount to racial profiling, and you can't do it. You can't just detain people or stop and frisk them effectively based on what they look like or whether they're, around a job area that you think is high in immigrants. And the Supreme Court, without giving any sort of window into their thinking and their logic, lifted that restriction. And Saagar, this is very consistent with a pattern we have seen with this Supreme Court under Trump 2.0, where kind of quietly, I don't know if this has gotten as much attention as it should, the Supreme Court has sided with the Trump administration on the shadow docket something like 16, 17 separate times. They've mostly been just racking up victories. And the reason it's called the shadow docket is because, as in this instance, it's not a ruling on the merits. So it's not like you get this long brief, oh, here's our thinking and here's what it means, blah, blah, blah. It's not a final decision on it. But in the meantime, they're lifting the injunction, and so the Trump administration can do what they want. We've seen similar things with regard to the ability to fire whoever they want without giving cause at these agencies that are supposed to be independent. We've seen similar things with regard to, they basically dismantled the Department of Education. Previously, you would have assumed that seems like something that Congress has to do, not the executive. Well, the court has allowed that to go forward. And so it truly has allowed the Trump administration to consolidate a massive amount of power without us getting any real logic or reasoning from the Supreme Court about how they're thinking through these things, or whether even they would rule ultimately on the merits in this direction. So this is just the latest in what has been an extraordinary series of victories for the Trump administration with the Supreme Court.
Yeah, you're right to explain on the shadow docket. It's a bit complicated, like you said, because they did not rule on the merits. It was Justice Kavanaugh writing, I believe, for the majority, it was 6-3, to come through on the shadow docket to allow the injunction to be lifted without ruling on it eventually. It is also a consequence of a lot of the extraordinary legal action and extraordinary behavior that's been taken on the part of the Trump administration, but it's certainly something to watch.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.